Live just on LinkedIn, or is it LinkedIn and Facebook?
We're actually live now, and we are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on YouTube. Just to give other people who are not on LinkedIn the chance to be with us as well. And I would like to say welcome to all of you to our session, Breaking the Glass Ceilings, Paving the Way for Minority Women's Success in the Workplace. I'm so stoked to have with me a couple of women who have a lot to say on the topic. Unfortunately, we don't have with us Jan, who is the head of HR at PayFit. Unfortunately, he had a personal emergency and couldn't join, and he's really bummed out about that. But we hope to talk to him another time. Then we have with me today Eunice, who is a content developer at IBM. Welcome, Eunice.
Thank you, Ronke.
We have Cressida, who is a recruiting partner and the owner of EdenChase.com.
Hi,
Welcome, Cressida.
everyone. Thanks for having me. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for joining. And then we have two of our co-founders of Black Women in Tech. There is Dola Akinduro. She's the director pre-sales at HubSpot. Hi, Dola.
Hello, hi everyone.
And last but not least, Chioma Nzwekwe, senior technology consultant at SAP. Hi, Chioma.
Hi. Nice to be here.
Yes, and of course, I have to introduce myself as well. My name is Ram Babuchia. I work at Fortinet as a manager of a pre-sale system engineering team. And today we are going to talk a little bit about what it's like working in the tech industry as a Black woman, what you need to do to make a career, and what we can do to support other Black women or minority women to also rise through the ranks and make a career and break the glass ceiling. And to kick things off, maybe each one of you can just briefly share some personal experience about overcoming barriers as a minority woman in your respective fields. And let me start off with Eunice.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's both as a Black and woman in the tech industry, and also kind of like a personal story, because I am a breast cancer champion. And
Mhm.
for me, the defining moment was when I was like diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'm this woman who is very passionate about my career, passionate about tech, and I'm faced with this life-threatening illness, and I'm like, okay, how do I go about it? The odds are
Mhm.
against me, with the illness and my disposition as well. And I had to tell myself, one, dig in and take out that resilience that I've built over the years working in
Mhm.
the tech industry as a Black woman, build up that courage, and because I didn't want to just let myself go and say, okay, you're focusing only on getting well, or things like that. But I wanted to
Mhm.
continue to grow because I have this growth mindset. I just didn't want to just wallow off in self-pity, as it may be.
Mhm.
And at that time, I decided to go out there, leverage on my strengths in tech, as well as all the experience that I've gained professionally over the years. I went out there, applied for roles like senior roles, with renowned companies, because I was transitioning, leaving
Mhm.
from being a contractor and going back to the profession.
Eunice, let me jump in here and ask you a couple of questions because I'm really interested in your story and I don't know all the details. So, you are now at IBM, right? And you're a
Yes,
content developer. And you
yes.
mentioned that you're a breast cancer survivor, and you mentioned that when this happened and you were in this difficult situation, you drew from your experience and the resilience you built as a woman in tech.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the story before, how you built that resilience and how you came to that point and build up this power that you had that helped you transition.
Yes. So one of the things, like being in Germany as a student, I came to Germany as a young woman, and coming to study like IT. which also is a male dominated, yeah, it's a male dominated area. And one of the things, like right from when I was a student, you'll sit in class and you'll be counting, maybe you're the only female in class, you're the only black woman, so I was always accustomed to being the odd one, the person who
Mhm.
is different from every other person. So
Yes.
you had also this thing of people second guessing you if you were as good enough as the others. So, or yeah. So
Mhm.
I'd already been through that, and I had to build resilience. I had to,
Mhm.
just go out there and do my thing and not think about whatever the other person is thinking or how the other person
Mhm.
wants to place me, but just go out there and do what I want to do, or do my
Yeah.
thing and try to be good at it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a good point, and I think this really, we can all relate to this as Black women in tech. This experience of being the only person who is different in the room, even if there are other women, we have this additional difference that makes us stand out, and we have to develop a lot of resilience and some mechanisms to cope with that situation. And maybe Chioma, you can tell us a little bit about your story and becoming a woman in tech, and also maybe you have some experience to add to this.
Yeah, so you asked the question around what is our, experience in overcoming barriers as minorities. So I think the simple thing or the easiest thing I would call out is always, I mean, the language barrier first. In Germany,
Yes.
DAC, that's one thing. But from a more deeper sense, has been struggling overcoming barrier of not feeling like I belong, or not feeling
Mhm.
like I'm supposed to be here, or not feeling like I'm accepted, or just generally said not belonging. So this is for me one of the key things I navigated, that I
Mhm.
worked hard to overcome, with a lot of work and talking to people, a lot of self effort, and of course with great mentors and great support system, then you are
Mhm.
able to navigate this, and every day is a new day and you keep tackling it. Life is all about
Yeah.
challenges. So yeah, and that's what I would like to share.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about building a support system, and this is absolutely something that we're trying to do with this Black Women in Tech DACH initiative that we started. And but before we talk about these things, maybe Dollar, I mean, I think if we look at your career, you also grew up in a completely white country. You are now the director pre-sales at HubSpot. Tell us, how was it for you? You know.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of shared experiences with Eunice and with Chioma. I really like that, we've touched on this point of resilience and building resilience,
Mhm.
because I think that has been absolutely key. I've said it before in one of our previous panels as well. I think Black females and minority females, but Black females in particular, probably some of the most resilient workforce you could fish out of the talent pool for that exact reason, right? Eunice spoke to being the only one in the room, always being the odd man out. And I think that's been my experience throughout as well. But what's interesting is probably maybe linked to the fact that I did sort of grow up in a predominantly white environment, probably white country. Um, it was always normal to be abnormal. Um, so what I sort of mastered throughout the years was assimilation, rather
Mhm.
than asking for a seat of my own, trying to fit into someone else's seat, is probably the best way I can put that.
Yeah.
And I became very comfortable striving to make other people comfortable in my presence. And it isn't until recently that I sort of realized that that's the absolute wrong way to go about it. Because what that does is, you always focus on someone else and how you can make someone else feel comfortable around you. And then you forget about what you need, to fit in, or what you need to succeed. And I think that's probably one of the things that sort of characterizes all of us in the society is we are seen as being resilient. That very far down the line is a positive thing. But what happens
Mhm.
with that as well is when support systems, and Chioma touched on support systems, when support systems are being built, we're not top of mind because
Mhm.
we're fine, right? We can
That's
handle it
wrong.
because we're used to yeah, exactly, we're used to handling a lot of things. So I think that's really probably like my most recent and key learning in all of this is because we've been so good at coping, we haven't actually done proper um, progress in setting expectations and moving the needle and making sure that systems are built to support people like us.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say about that.
That's such a very astute point of view, actually, because while you were talking, I realized this is very much what I have been doing all my life as a Black woman in a predominantly white society. I have the advantage of growing up speaking German, so I did not have the issue with the language. And I also had this experience of always being the odd one out, so it was kind of like a normal thing, and I just created my mechanisms to work with that. But it does actually mean that I spend very little time thinking about what I would need to thrive. And I think a lot of the energy that we use to build this resilience, try to work around the system, if we didn't have to expend that, we could create unbelievable things because we would have this free potential to bring to the workplace. So obviously there are some companies trying to change a little bit about how they approach women, especially women from different minorities, and how they bring them into the workplace. And I would like to dive into that, but before I ask what HubSpot does, I would like to bring Cressida into the conversation and ask her, because she is a recruiting partner and she is also the owner of Eden Chase. And can you tell us a little bit about what best practices for companies to bring minority women in space and actually support them, not just have them there?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to say is I'm very, very grateful to be here. And I, from my perspective, and hearing your stories, it makes me really realize how, from a white privilege perspective, how much I take for granted. So hearing your stories and you sharing that with me, I really appreciate that. And I think part of this is what I want to do is get white women to actively be allies and advocate for minority women. But I'll come to a point about that later on when we go through stuff. But so in terms of initiatives and policies, I think so. I think there are about, and I've got some stats somewhere, there are about 83 million people in Germany at the moment, and over 50% are women. Germany doesn't actually, I think, and I know, sorry, I'm talking about Germany rather than the DACH region, but I don't think Germany, I couldn't find any stats for how many minority women are actually living in Germany at the moment. I don't think they, German Bundestag actually collate that kind of information intersectionally. But I believe it's less than 1%. So if you're an organization looking at trying to reach target minority women, you need to start thinking at about a strategic pipeline route level. So in other words, working with and collaborating with partner organizations that are set up specifically to support young Black women, young minority women who are looking to get into tech. Okay, we've got a brilliant example in the UK. They're called Coding Black Females, and they work very closely with women who've been in tech for 5 minutes or 5 years, and they create these incredible accelerator training programs where women can learn their crafts in a safe environment where they've got their tribe, they've got a brilliant network of supportive women around them. And clients who are really leaning into this will advertise through their Slack portal on apprenticeships, programs, etc. And those roles are specifically targeted for women in minority roles. So that's one way that organizations can be really strategic and think, if you just have a route to market, which most people do, and they talk about talent attraction, which is advertising, let's face it, either through your website or a job board or social media, or maybe you use an agency for that. The common thread throughout all of that is advertising. Now, if you're trying to target and attract the smallest demographic talent pool, advertising is too generic a tool to target that candidate group. You need to be proactive, and you need to really specifically target those groups rather than advertising, because what you're expecting is that less than 1% of minority women in Germany, in the DACH region, in the UK, there are I believe it's 16% of women are in tech. I believe it's 8% of women are minority women. So you need to be more proactive. You cannot sit back and have a passive talent attraction strategy and hope that these incredible, brilliant minority women are going to suddenly wander past your front door and go, oh, that looks like quite a good company. I think I'll apply there. Thank you. That's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. We've talked about how important it is for minority women to be seen, to have a safe place, to be heard. So that's going to be a key route for minority women to find roles. And so that's really the key thing is for organizations to think about, is working at grassroots level, partnering with organizations, but also their approach to route to market as well.
Yeah. So what I hear is that it's actually really difficult, obviously, especially also because there are very few, and you have to be very intentional if you want to target them. But I want to take a small diversion because we wanted to talk about this a little later, but I want to talk about the perception of minority women in these societies, because you said these amazing educated women and they will not wander past the door. And I love that you have this perception. But there's another thing that we're battling with as Black women in the space. And I would like to ask Chioma and Dola about this. What is your perception of how Black women are seen in these societies, in these white societies? What prejudices do we face? Who wants to go? Chioma?
Okay, I'll go. So yeah, that's a very good question, but at the same time, it's also very, very subjective and very, very individual based. Okay, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I did talk about breaking stereotypes or avoiding leaning into a single story or thinking that people are in this certain way. I mean, it's not a news, or it's not new. If you go over the internet online, there's a lot of stereotypes attached to women, attached to Black people, and that's real. So even in the workplace, that's real. I have lived through being in the workplace, people hearing things like, well, I don't know how to relate with you. I don't know questions to ask you. I don't know. And I'm asking to myself, so you don't know how to be human? So but it's just because they feel like we are some certain way. We want to be talked in a certain way. And that I really find funny sometimes, because we are all human beings. And that's where I feel like this prejudices or this type of singles mentality should really be dropped. So, and yeah, and like people should embrace that we are all we're all
Yeah.
human, just humanness, and be that. But it's real. It's real, I would say. And the world is still like that, but we need to keep talking about it and ensuring that people are not stuck with the stereotypes or stuck with what the media has told them, imaginations, but open up more and begin to foster that, embracing that diversity in real terms, or in real with real actions.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you mentioned diversity, and I think this is such an important point because we see a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and obviously they're meant to promote, more equality in the workplace, make it easier for diverse talent to join. But I think that companies really have to be intentional about the way they approach these programs, and they have to realize that diversity is not the same, for every different subgroup of diverse talent. So especially Black women, I think, need a special support. And coming to supporting diverse talent and hiring talent, Cressida has given us some insight on what intentional activities you have to do to find these women. But I'd like to ask Dola, because I know HubSpot has quite a good rep around diversity, and I know that you are working there. Then Leslie, who is one of our co-founders, is also working there, which is already more than Black women than I know. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you approach that when it comes to hiring Black women or finding Black women, or the initiatives to make them stay. It's also a point, I think.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, what I think HubSpot has done really well, and I can only speak to this from my own personal experience as a Black woman who did seek to work at HubSpot and currently works at HubSpot. I think the number one thing that the company does, which resonates with me, is we're very open about the fact that uh, we don't have all the answers and we still have work to do. So, really acknowledging that we haven't cracked this code. We're doing our best, but it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means for me as a Black woman in the workplace is it allows me space and room to make suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
because often when companies are so proud of, oh, we, diversity, and we're doing all these things and it's fantastic, essentially what many of us are hearing is, if you're not happy with it, then you're the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the company is doing all these things to help you. So
Yeah.
if you're not happy with it, then you're the
Maybe
problem, because
something's wrong
we're
with you,
successful.
huh? Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think, HubSpot coming at it from the perspective of, this is a journey, this is a long-term journey, right? Like, a punchline is, we want to build a company that our grandchildren will be proud of, right? So it's a long-term journey. It's something that we're committed to, and it's something that we're committed to at the senior level as well. So, we hold ourselves accountable to it. Senior leaders are held accountable to it. We have the diversity report that comes out on a yearly basis, and it's shared globally. So, we can share our progress, but we're also, equally transparent and open about our growth areas. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's coming at it from the right perspective, and it from my perspective, what that does is it shows intentionality and humility in this journey, because none of us have all the answers, and that's
Yeah.
to Chioma's point there. I was just smiling in the last question, because I think as Black females, we're always, expected to have all the answers. And the same thing, a company that's, doing really well, they're expected to have all the answers. No one has all the answers, because as our CEO, my CEO actually said once, there's diversity in diversity, right? So, per
Absolutely.
definition, it's really difficult for any single body or organization to have all the answers. So, once we take that off the table, we can start looking at how can we be very intentional creating solutions for individual groups and communities, and being open to feedback, making sure that we keep that feedback loop open to allow for, moving the needle in different directions as and when the situations arise and are needed. And I think that's what HubSpot does really well. And then there are, specific actions like having employee resource groups and supporting the growth and development of communities within the organization. We have Africans in HubSpot at,
Mm-hmm.
as an employee resource group. I work in pre-sales. Within pre-sales, we have a BIPOC community just for pre-sales. We have a BIPOC community just for sales. And all of these initiatives are supported and welcomed and championed within the organization. And I was recently able to go to my CSO, for example, and say, hey, would you mind joining one of these meetings once?
Mm-hmm.
We could maybe have a panel and ask you some questions and see how you're thinking about this at one of the most senior levels in the organization. And he champions that. These are the
Mm-hmm.
things that mean something, to me, at least
Yeah.
personally as an individual. Another thing that you mentioned, like, I'm a Black woman working at HubSpot. We've got Leslie, also another Black female working at HubSpot. There is strength in numbers. I can't count how many times minority women have written to me on LinkedIn or reached out to me through another channel, just to say, I'm really inspired by all the things that I'm hearing about HubSpot. Is it true? And what you want as a company is for your diverse talents to go, yes, absolutely. Yes, it is
Mhm.
true. And here is how I feel like I belong in this company. Because no matter how many organizations you partner with to get talent, no matter how, all the things that you can do in terms of making sure that you're using inclusive language in the job postings, all of that, if you don't have representation within your people and you don't have championship within the diverse talent that you have in your organization, then essentially we go out of it with, oh, well, maybe it's all just for show, because it is all just for show in many companies.
Yeah.
And many, minority communities are looking to sidestep and not fall into those traps. So I think that's from a HubSpot perspective, at least, what I would say we're doing really well.
Yeah. You made a couple of really profound points in what you just said. And one thing I just want to repeat what you said is there's diversity in diversity. This is such an important thing to understand because, I mean, even if companies create diversity and inclusion programs, they usually try this one size fits all solution. So that's important to just emphasize that, not every minority is the same and that we need different answers for different people. Not even, not even white women are all the same. Not nobody is the same as the other person, and that's where the whole equity thing comes in. It's not just about hiring diversity or pretending to have inclusion, like and having numbers, but you have to make sure that every single person has the ability to thrive. The other thing you mentioned, and I think that's also so important to understand, and that is C-level buy-in. Having the buy-in from top management and them showing the support around how important is understanding that they need to be the ones who role model diversity and inclusion and equity. So I don't want to actually start repeating everything you said. I think you said it perfectly. So I'll just, hop over to Eunice and ask her about her experience. Did when you were in your career, when you were making it, when you were encountering your difficult situation around the breast cancer, did you feel supported? Did you feel that they were making an effort to help you through this situation? Or maybe in another situation where you say, okay, as a Black woman in tech, I felt supported, or this is what really went well, or this didn't go well.
Um, I would say in other situations, I'll start with other situations first. There's this thing about the angry Black woman that maybe it comes from, I would say it's from the frustration sometimes that we face when we want to bring our point across, especially as a Black woman in tech. Um, this thing of maybe second guessing the Black woman in tech when there's like a problem that has to be solved and you want to bring your idea forward. You are being looked on like, your own idea is being taken as the last or not really taken into consideration.
Experience.
And then you need to like force
Push.
and push your idea forward. And
Mm-hmm.
it can sometimes lead to frustration and then overreaction, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. So
Yes.
yeah, so those are some of the challenges that I have faced in my career. Um, and then about the breast cancer, yes, I felt supported in the organization that I am in. I
Mm-hmm.
felt supported at one level, like, you know, giving me the space to go for my treatments and do other things. But sometimes I felt like it played against me, in my going forward with my career. Sometimes I
Okay.
felt like I put in more than and I receive less than I
Mm-hmm.
deserve. Sometimes I did feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm trying to understand what made you feel that way, that you were investing more energy and giving more from yourself than you got back in your career. What made you feel that way? What could they have done differently?
So when it comes to like being getting the promotion, or getting promotion in whatever sense that it could be,
Mhm.
because I think I did try to leverage on that resilience and push myself forward, and keep
Mhm.
pushing, but didn't get back what I think. Yeah.
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 It's interesting that you mentioned this because this
Yeah.
is something that a lot of women report who are working in male dominated fields, that they feel that they are overlooked in promotion. So, and I'm giving this to Cressida because she has, this insight in so many different companies. Is this something that you feel companies can address? Because I know that part of it is, of course, the different ways that men and women communicate and the way we approach the workplace. But do you feel that there is some way we can address this as managers to make sure that women actually have the feeling that their input is honored and it's also represented in promotions and what they get back from the company?
Yeah. And this is, absolutely. And this is a huge topic. I could talk for hours. Obviously, I won't about it, but just to kind of give it some context. So you mentioned before about and Eunice, her story is incredible. Is that there's nothing more that makes you feel more empty than when you give everything and you get very little back. Now, and if we want to create an environment, and I think what Eunice is talking about is having a psychologically safe environment where she feels that she belongs and she's seen and people meet her where she is. And that comes from, and we mentioned it before, about senior leadership. So senior leadership need to be putting the stakes in the ground and saying this is what good inclusion and diversity looks like. And with that comes all of the senior leadership team, hiring managers, anybody who's in a management role and in a position of hiring externally need to undergo inclusive leadership training. And they need to undergo, and everyone talks about, yes, well, our teams have done unconscious bias training, but it's more than that. It's cognitive bias training. So there's all these different biases that people don't think about, which have a massive impact in decision making, which then end up marginalizing women and their progression and promotion prospects in work. So if you start off with a senior leadership team who are their personal performance measurements are linked into diversity and inclusion efforts. And so therefore they are partly accountable for developing and promoting an inclusive team environment in their worlds within the organization they work in. Suddenly, Eunice's experience might be different. And that's the starting point of this, is that managers need to be held accountable for promoting and supporting inclusion. Women need to be specific accelerator career programs in place for women. In the UK, and this is a very sad fact, I went to an incredible conference last month, and it's going to take 300 years for there to be equality in the UK between women and men. 300 years. Now that's, and that's talking from a white privilege perspective, okay? So if we really want to lean into this, it's not, and Dola said it as well, it's not, there's no straight fix. No one's got it right. We're all still going to continue making mistakes, okay? This is a journey. This is a journey that's going to last for decades and decades and decades. But my goodness, we need to start to make a start somewhere. So we need to think about how can I've got brilliant people, I've got brilliant women, I've got brilliant BIPOC women in my organization. I need to elevate and I need to amplify their voices and I need to advocate for them. And people need to have that intention, and it needs to be a gut thing, and they need to get hold of their management. So through the training, they do that. They need to have accelerator programs. They need to have for senior leadership roles. And this is something that IKEA do very, very well. So IKEA have 50-50, nearly 50-50 parity in senior leadership roles around the world. And the way they do this is their final candidates at interview are always one man, one woman. Always. You never have two men, ever. Now, if you have that as a practice and you kind of like looking at amplifying that across the business, you suddenly can then say, well, look, we don't have enough women in our shortlist. Okay, well, there aren't enough women to choose from, is typically what an employer will say. But then let's look at them, looking at the junior people coming up. This is where the accelerator program comes in. Let's look at mentoring them. Let's looking at giving them and looking over the fence so they can see what the possibility and the opportunity is. Because don't we want to bring them along and lift as we climb? Because isn't that the point? Because when you've got when you employ an organization and you've got individuals in your organization that represent the customer group that you're trying to sell to, then you're going to win.
Yeah.
But if your employee group is all white women, white men, all white, there aren't any disabilities, you know, that there aren't any people who are neurodivergent, you are really restricting the potential of your organization. So, and I'm sorry, I've gone off piece, Ronki, because I've gone.
No, please. You said some more important things.
But it's just, you know, there needs to be, there's too much, and I see too much, and this does wind me up, and you probably can tell. There's too much lip service to it, right? It is difficult. It's hard. You need to, it's patient. You need to be patient. It's for the longer term, but you need to actually senior leadership. If anyone's senior leadership's watching, CIO, senior leadership, right? Stop talking about it. Get off your backsides, invest in training, and actually learn what your own biases and barriers are in your recruitment processes. Okay, there are barriers to accessing fabulous female Black talent, candidates with disabilities, neurodivergent candidates, candidates from the LGBTQIA+ communities. You need to proactively go out there and look and have a sanity check on what are we doing now and what does our current recruitment process give us in terms of candidate demographics, right?
Yeah.
And it's no good having an interview process that is brilliant for attracting all these amazing Black women in tech, BIPOC women, etc., and then none of them actually make it to the end of the hiring process and none of them get hired. Because then what that data is showing you is that there's a problem with accessibility and there's a bias that's coming into play that's preventing those women from progressing. And that's the same internally if you look at it from a promotion perspective. If you've got lots of amazing women, Black women, BIPOC women, and they're not getting promoted, that's nothing to do with the candidate. And that's everything to do with the internal setup and the internal organizational structure and the biases that are coming in to prevent those women from progressing.
Yeah.
And
Thank
that's
you
really
so much.
easy to do. I just wanted to amplify
Yes,
that
please.
because you're saying something really, really important, Cressida. And in an organization, we do this. The pre-sales organization at HubSpot, it is standard practice to look on a yearly basis who've we promoted, and then look to some of these diversity indicators that are important to us to see, you know, how does that parity show up in the metrics.
Yeah.
So no, I love everything you said there. I also think it cascades through if you have a bunch of, you know, diverse talent on the individual contributor level, but you have close to none in leadership or in senior leadership. Essentially, again, you're telling a story of, yeah, that's fine, we'll bring you in to be an individual contributor, but you will never make it to management or you'll never make it to progress within this organization. So we need to be mindful of this on all levels. So I absolutely love what you said there, Presta.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. I don't even know where to start because you talked about all these things that are actually going wrong in most companies when you look at it in detail, you know. So there's one thing, it's bringing women into the fold of the company, and it's true for all women, not just minority women. So everyone's hiring women, and then they're there, and then nobody takes care of them, so they have no chance to advance and they leave. So you have all this potential that is being wasted, you know. But at the same time, because they have created the numbers, you know, we hired, I don't know, 25% women, they clap their shoulders, we did a good job. And nobody talks about retention, and nobody talks about progress, and nobody talks about mentoring, and nobody talks about, you know, sponsoring these women to get to the top. And the topic of this talk is paving the way for minorities and breaking the glass ceiling. And that's actually why it's so hard for women, and especially minority women, to break that glass ceiling. It's hard enough for white women. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. And then there's so few of us. I love what Dola said about, having the strength in numbers. It just makes you feel less alone if you have someone who is like you in the company. But there's so few of us, and then if there's like one black woman in the company, and then maybe there's one woman wearing a hijab, and then I don't know, maybe there's one woman from India, and there are maybe and there are, I don't know, 95% men. Nobody really questions why it's only men in the management, right? They just kind of assume that it's because the women are so few and they're not good enough or something. So the intentionality is missing. There is no intentionality. And you talked about how important it is to bring people from different minority groups, disability groups, LGBTQ, and so forth. We all know the numbers. We all know that companies who have a diverse workforce, especially companies who have female leadership, that they are more productive, that they make better numbers. But for some reason, even though we know all this has been researched, this has been proven. When push comes to shove, and I think it's important to mention that we're in one of those times again. There is fear of recession, there is inflation, and I feel we are seeing how these threats are kind of pushing diversity talent out of the workplace again, even though we know that if we retained them and kept them in there, we would, be far more likely to succeed. Is that also something you're seeing? I'm not entirely sure, but I'm reading about this. But are you seeing this trend as well of diversity talent, minority talents being pushed out of the workplace at the moment?
Is that for me or
For all of you? I'm just opening up the discussion because I heard this and I would like to.
I'll let someone else speak.
So if I have to say something, so I think Cressida is totally spot on and correct in what how she described this, especially around the lip sync or whatever. And I think that's what I also want to to talk about. So first of all, I would acknowledge there are so many programs, so many tools out there, so many work being done by companies, to actually help push this diversity agenda. Okay. But however, I think what we now need is to look in critically on, there is diversity in diversity, as Dollar mentioned. What are the key? What are we, if you take a particular group, maybe you're looking at the minority or BIPOC group, what exactly is being done? What are the metrics that you're targeting? There's this popular thing I've heard many times. They say, yeah, we're just looking to hire the best person on the role. The best person for the role. It doesn't matter, you're female, the best person for the role. And I just see that as a little bit of very shallow, because yet we're talking about diversity, then you again have totally ignored that, and you're looking at, I want to hire the best person for the role. And I can guarantee you that there are 100 people that are going to be the best for that role. So how are you now, putting in what is the layer of the diversity metric, or for whatever group that you're sponsoring or canvassing for, to make sure that that group is represented? Because at the end of the day, I think the representation for me is the key cross, or is the key, or is the core of diversity and inclusion. If you talk about diversity and still we're not able to see it, it's not represented, some groups are not there, I think that's where we need to keep working hard on it. And it's not easy, it's a journey. And I acknowledge whatever that's being done, but I think that's why platform like this and what we're doing today, talking
Mhm.
about it, speaking, bringing up those points, and ensuring that leadership team, not just leadership team, everybody, you are part of the process in any way you can contribute, you can be part of it. We all should be hands-on, truly involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
love
love
that.
that you mentioned this, and I love that you mentioned this saying, we want to just hire the best person for the role, and doesn't matter what skin color, what gender. But in the end, what people don't realize is, as you said, there are 100 best persons for the role, and then the bias kicks in. because people don't address that. And there's a book that I ask everyone to read, and it's called The Authority Gap. Just read that book and read about how we as a society have been conditioned to see men as experts and not women, how we react to different voices, how we assume a lower voice carries more gravitas, and all these things. And it's not just men, it's women as well. So even if you are a female hiring manager, and people might assume that you will not have a bias against other women, it's just not true. We have to be very intentional and look at all our biases to understand what is happening. You're not hiring the best person for the role, you're hiring the person you're most comfortable with. And that's not necessarily the best person in terms of expertise or in terms of what's good for your company. And so thank you for mentioning this merit-based superstition around merit that a lot of these companies have. It's just not real, you know.
If I could just jump in and say that Chiomas' point about, when we talk about wanting to, get the best person for the job, and we've already acknowledged and accepted that actually, so if that is the case, then probably your shortlist isn't going to be very diverse in the first place, because if you're using the typical routes to market like advertising, agencies, etc., we know that women only apply for roles unless they fulfill 100% of the criteria. And for candidates with disabilities, particularly in the UK, they will only apply to you if you are a disability confident employer. And if you're not, they'll never apply because they won't be treated fairly. So back to Chiomas' point, if you want to get, and this is genuinely, again, this is where the hard work kicks in, and you've got to be creative when you are hiring. If you genuinely want to have more minority women in your workforce, you need to target them. You need to headhunt them. Don't advertise, right? Don't have these wonderful social media campaigns. Again, you will be one. In the UK last year, there were 850,000 adverts. What makes your advert more appealing to my wonderful colleagues here than say the 849,999 that are also being advertised, right? You need to be proactive and you need to headhunt. So my golden tip, and you can have it for free for everybody watching, is you need to go online and hang out where your target audience are hanging out. So if you want to target more people with disabilities, if you want to target more people who are neurodivergent, if you want to target more women, minority women, or from other ethnic backgrounds, whatever it might be, you target and you hang out where those groups are, okay? And then you look at where they hang out in person, and then you go there. That's how you do it. And there's been an evolution now, and candidates and women, and again, I'm not speaking for myself because it's not my lived experience, but from the amazing Black women and BIPOC women that I speak to, is that they're very skeptical. They don't want to be the token hire, so it's they don't want to be the token hire and then go there 6 months later, end up leaving, because guess what? Just like I think Chiomas said before, is that you go there and actually you become the problem and they don't want to know you anymore, and so you're made to feel really uncomfortable that you can't be yourself, so you end up leaving. So what you need to be doing, and this is very Web3 now, and this is how it's all evolving, is you need to build communities. You need to build communities in the demographic groups where you want to bring people on board, okay? And that's how you're going to get diverse workforce. That takes a huge amount of effort, okay? And so some companies are going to go, do you know what? Yep, I'm in it for the longer term. I want to do that. I'm going to lean into that. Other companies are going to go, no, we're good, thanks. Carry on advertising. Say that we want a diverse workforce, but we can't get the candidates through. And that's how it is. But that's literally what it's going to boil down to, is you've got to go after the amazing talent that's out there. They're out there, but you just have to really now be clever about it.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that. A lot of what we talked about today is about intentionality and really focusing on this whole agenda, not just talking about it. And I think what we all realized in the past month is we have a shortage of talent anyway. So the whole advertising and hoping someone will actually apply for a job isn't working in any space, at least not in IT. I don't know how you're seeing it. I'm trying to hire just an intern, where you would think it would be easy. No chance. Nobody's
Mhm.
interested. So, which means that already the mainstream stream talent is not addressable with ads, and especially not the minority talent. And there was a comment from someone who said that a lot of company hire people of color for the picture on the webpage, and you mentioned women of color being skeptical about the whole intention of the company. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more, because there was this euphoria around diversity and inclusion a couple of years. There was this big traction that this topic gained, and a lot of people put diverse talent on their webpage, and black women and women in hijabis and all that on their webpage, and disabled people and LGBTQ people. But when you are in the company, you didn't feel accepted and you didn't feel included. So, and I think also the HubSpot example shows it really well. And everything you said, Cressida, thank you so much for all your input. It just shows that if there is no intention and buy-in from top management and an ongoing process to actually support minority talent, they will not succeed, no matter how many of them you hire. I think that's one of the things. But since we're coming to the end of our session, I would like to just, we built this group to support other women, Black women in tech in the DACH region, and I want to end the session with maybe some of your learnings and what you could recommend them if they are thinking of going into tech. Because despite all the things we've said, this is a great place to be, and it's actually a place where you can do a lot of great things. You can earn good money. You can make a career if you have the support of groups like ours, and other women and allies like Cressida, and. So I'll just start out with maybe Eunice, because we have a bit talked over you for the last minutes. What would you tell a young woman going into the space? Maybe some crumbs of wisdom.
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is to be curious and open to learning. Um, yeah, be curious about tech. Be Try out new things. Don't be afraid. Be courageous. Second, get a mentor. That's very important. Somebody who can, on different aspects, whether on the technology front, guide you around things, or on the professional front, or on the leadership front, depending on where you want to go, and set goals for yourself, like where you want to see yourself, you know, and work towards that. Yeah.
Yes, good point. Mentorship. And this is actually a topic we did want to talk about as well. Yeah, thank you for that, Eunice. Absolutely. So, Chioma, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah, for the young people out there, I think Eunice said it well. But I would just like to add to it that it's not going to be easy. I mean, why not? We know the world, life doesn't owe us, the world doesn't owe you any favor. So brace up, okay? Brace up and don't see it as me versus the world, or the world against me, or whatever, having that victim mentality. And I tell you, we as minority, it's very easy for us to fall into that category, start thinking that we are the victim, the system is against us, it's because of my color and all that. And it's not easy, but I would like to encourage you to stand above that. Find as much as possible to always change your narrative in your head, edit your stories, think about what is exactly the actual, what is the is what my story in my head is telling me, or how my emotions are playing games with me. So I think this is it's very key, and know that, and that's why we're here today speaking about it, because we want to make this journey that everybody, no matter what race, how are you, wherever you come from in the world, your personality, your differences, you are all part of, we are all human, we are all the same. I mean, but it's a journey. But with that, we must always, first of all, rise within us, accept and know that we have to be very, very, strong, and always, make sure we step up and ignore whatever our stories of it, whatever we feel about ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Chioma. I think it's absolutely important to mention that, I mean, it's not easy for anyone. And
Yeah.
sometimes it may be harder, a little bit harder for us. But in the end, it's a lot about, and there we are again with the resilience we are building, and that's helping us. And of course, having others to support you and not, just giving up and letting the emotions get the best of you. So, Dola,
Yeah.
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think mentorship is absolutely crucial. I have worked with a couple of coaches in my career, and I can only recommend that. So I would say, reach out to us in the community, and we can recommend some good coaches for you. But it's absolutely worth the investment, because what coaches can help you do is to figure out who you are, figure out what you need. Don't make the same mistake as I did, and build your career around making other people happy. Figure out what you need to thrive, and do that as fast as possible. um, and just as we've spoken about intentionality, and just as we've said that employers and companies need to be very intentional, so do we, and so do you
Mhm.
all. So taking that first step and figuring out what's important to you will allow you to be very intentional about the opportunities that you seek, and the environments that you then move towards and that you engage in, the type of companies that you look to join. And then to what Chioma said there, absolutely spot on, right? So it's difficult. And we know it's difficult. This is all part of why this community exists, is we want to create a safe space for, sharing experiences and getting support. That being said, you still need to get up in the morning and go and get whatever it is that you're striving towards, be successful. So leave that baggage behind, right? A coach very early on in my career told me no one can see your scars, which is quite profound, or it was quite profound to me, because I would have this tendency of holding on to almost grudges, and I would collect experiences like like someone was paying me. And at the end of the day, all of that is useless. And so as you're entering and as you're becoming the truest and most optimal version of yourself, remember that you need to shed a lot of the negative experiences, learn from them, let them help you get to a point where you're able to clearly articulate and identify where you need to be and where you don't need to be, and then let the rest go, because the rest of it is just noise. So that you can be very
Yeah.
intentional about how you show up for that next opportunity, because I promise you, if you show up, it could be the right opportunity, it could be the best company in the world, but if you're showing up with bitterness and
Mhm.
negativity, that's only going
Mhm.
to manifest itself in the way that you carry on going forward. So that would be my advice as well.
Thank you, Dola. That was so deeply inspirational that I don't even have anything to add to that. I just would like to thank Cressida for all the insight she gave, in terms of how companies can support us. And allies like you, Cressida, are actually what makes it really easier for all of us to succeed. I don't know if you have something to share with young women entering the field.
Couple of points. I'll be very, very, really quick. I'm conscious of time, but I would say, so first of all, find your people, find your tribe. It's very daunting when women first start their careers, okay? Find people either internally in your organization or externally that you want to be like, that they're emulating where you want to be. So whether that's internal employee resource groups, tech networking groups externally, go to where these women are hanging out and go up to them, be brave and ask, will you help me? Will you be my mentor? Because women are amazing at supporting other women. We are, most of the time, I should say. But and they will take that as a massive compliment. There's a stat that I want young women in their careers to think about. So women who have a strong network are 2.5 times more likely to stay in their careers, or to stay in their role rather longer, I should say. When it comes to progression, they are 70% more likely to get access to roles that aren't normally advertised, right?
Mhm.
So networking is key. Find your people, find your tribe, speak to these incredible people here around me. If I can help in any way, get in contact with me on LinkedIn. But just ask for help, be vulnerable. These amazing women will be here to help you.
Thank you, Cressida. And on the topic of finding a tribe and joining the community, we have a LinkedIn group. It's called Black Women in Tech Dach. It has the same logo as the event, so if you search, you will find us. We also have a page. Please follow us, so we can keep you informed. We are absolutely going to host events like this again, and we would love to have you here. It's been a really lively discussion in the comments, and I enjoyed reading them all on the side. Couldn't actually bring all of them on the screen, but thank you all for participating. And for the ladies in the studio with me, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your thoughts and for your sharing so openly what happened in your career and your thoughts. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.